Welcome to Pro Audio Profiles. My name is Brendan Decora, and each week I'll be hosting different guests, mainly engineers and producers, but also people from across the industry. Enjoy. On today's show, we have Jennifer Johns. She's an accomplished artist and an inductee of the Bay Area Hip Hop Archives. Enjoy. First and foremost, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Awesome. I'd like to start by going over your backstory, if you want to share how you got to where you are.
Yeah, I've been singing since I can remember. My earliest memories of myself are singing in the bathtub.
Right.
So I don't remember a time where I wasn't singing. I grew up in Oakland, California. And if you know anything about the Bay Area, it's a rich history of just diverse music. One of the things that I love the most about where I'm from is that you can't just play one kind of music.
Right.
You know, you may be a soul singer, but there's going to be some Afro beats there. There's going to be some jazz. There's going to be a little bit of everything. And so I grew up singing in church choir. Then I went on to sing with the Oakland Youth Chorus. And when I moved to Los Angeles for the first time when I was 19 was when I began to start playing more with being a solo vocalist. For me, singing was like my after-school sport. You know, like I grew up singing in a cappella ensembles and choirs and so forth. And so for me, it was always a community activity. And when I got to LA, I was like, I got to figure out what my voice is. Like, what is this thing that, you know, that moves me so much? Like, what do I sound like? And so I started playing with it here, created a night called Pure Love. For about 4 or 5 years where I just gave myself the space and opportunity to shred and shed and be in my process. And I learned really quickly that my roots were fertile, that I'm a whole bunch of things. I don't have a one sound. I am the through line. So I think that's how I got here.
Right. Nice.
Yeah.
So how do you mentioned working with different genres and styles of music. How do you approach experimenting with different genres and styles, and what's been the most exciting experiments so far?
You know, that's not an easy question to answer. And I think it's hard probably for most musicians if you are really kind of spiritually led. So I don't necessarily approach my creative processes and say, I'm going to get into this genre, right? I'm going to make this thing that feels good. And because I have been marinated in a whole bunch of things, then, you know, certain kinds of drum patterns show up. You know, I've been listening to house music forever, right? So you're going to hear some house influences if that's where I'm at that day when I got up, you know? You're going to hear some jazz, right? If that's where I woke up that day. And so for me, the exciting thing is to try stuff.
Right.
You know, I am not quite sure what's going to happen when I start. It just happens.
Exactly. Nice. And can you share a personal story about how music, yours or someone else's, has had a profound effect on your life?
Wow. My favorite profound music experience is when I was 5 years old and I heard We Are the World for the first time. And it's my favorite story because I think that it's a really good encapsulation of who I am as a person. The first time I heard We Are the World, I was inspired because it was Michael Jackson, it was Quincy Jones. I knew that they were like the sun, the moon, the stars. Like I just loved them already. And then all of these diverse voices, and they were coming together. And though I didn't completely understand what all was happening or what the backstory was at the time, there was this convergence of these different styles of voices that were coming together that were so powerful. And there was a choir, and I've always loved choirs. Like one way to make me cry is let me listen to like the South African Boys Choir. Like it's over, right? And so I loved this big wall of sound, and I came home from, I would have been in like first grade, kindergarten. I started young, so maybe first grade. And I sang the whole song from front to back to my parents. Right. And I was like, da-da! And they were like, we should probably tell you why this song was created. Right. And that was the first time that I heard the word hunger. And it broke my heart. Like, even as I'm talking about it, I'm like, oh, don't cry. Like, it really, really broke my heart. Right. Because it was the first time that I understood that humans allowed for such foul shit to happen. And I was really disappointed in the adults in the world for allowing such ridiculous shit to happen. Right. And so I wound up organizing a sing-a-thon. When I think about it, I laugh. I organized a sing-a-thon with my church, and we raised $10,000 and sent it to Bishop Tutu because there was this place in far-off place called Africa where people were not eating. Right. And so the most profound thing about music for me is that it's not intelligent, it's not intellectual, it's a spiritual thing. It's a soul-stirring thing, and it can make people do things that aren't rational. Right. And so I was able to convince people to sit in one place as a 5-year-old for 24 hours and sing the same song over and over and over again. And while we didn't cure hunger in the far off place at that time called Africa, we did impact food security in my community. Nice. And for me, that is the most profound thing about what we as musicians get to do. Right.
Nice. And you do production yourself. I know you produce your own songs and lots of that kind of stuff. Is there any specific tools or technologies that have allowed you to explore new creative territories in the studio?
Thank God for the people who made Ableton. I just want to say, like, hallelujah, praise the Lord for whoever that human being is. Like, I really need to know that person's name. I've been producing. I've used Logic. I use my body. I use myself. And I am fortunate enough to have had really awesome bands that I'm able to create sketches. And that has been a lot of my practice has been, I've created something, I take it to my musicians, you know, they create from there. But Ableton, as of late, especially as I have been returning kind of my own personal Sankofa moment, going back to grab my electronic roots and pulling it forward into the live elements, leveraging Ableton with my live elements has been really powerful.
Nice.
For sure.
Nice. So how do you balance the use of technology while maintaining authenticity in your music?
I think technology is our friend. Like, in this moment, in this time right now, as we're talking about AI and folks are scared of technology, I think technology used well is an extension of us, right? And so I don't think that I really have to balance between remaining authentic and using technology. I think technology is authentic. You know, I think technology was made for us to be able to do more. And so as long as I put my spirit in it, then it's all the same. Right. That's how I feel.
Yeah. And can you discuss a time when you felt your cultural identity was challenged or celebrated through your music?
By others?
Either.
I think my cultural identity is celebrated in everything that I do from me. I show up as me. Right. And my cultural identity is being a Black American, is being hip hop. In this musical journey, in many ways, my cultural identity as hip hop has superseded my experience as being a Black musician. And so I think that my cultural identity is celebrated in the way that I show up. I recently got the incredible honor of being inducted into the Bay Area Hip Hop Archives.
Nice, congrats.
Thank you. And so that would definitely be a moment where I felt like I was celebrated culturally. That meant a lot to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. And when it comes to the studio, how do you like the studio environment to be set up to help you reach your creative peak?
You know, I'm a better live recording artist from my perspective.
Okay.
So my favorite studio experience is when I get to transform a venue into a studio.
Right.
I got to sing on a song with Michael Franti some years back, and the room was really big.
Okay.
And I got to sing on, a stage mic, a Shure, right? And I got to move around the way that I feel, right? So my favorite environment is when it's open space, it's big, I can dance around, I can be fully embodied. I am not a huge fan of standing in the cans and having to stand still. Like, I just am not good at it. I don't like that shit.
Right.
So for me, I like environments that are open, that are bright, that are, filled with good energy and good people. When I am in a conventional or typical or what we think of as a normal studio environment. Again, I like plants. I like it to smell good. I like to have pictures of people and things that I love in that space. Oftentimes studios are really like dark and kind of flat, and that's the function, right? Is that it needs to be kind of a one size fits all type of vibe. And I really am grateful. I record at Trap Heels. Damon does an excellent job of making sure that there are like really awesome candles, specifically the ones that say Aquarius on it, because I'm an Aquarius, and so it makes me feel at home.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. And can you discuss a time when you faced creative block or anxiety in the studio, and what helped you overcome that hurdle?
Fucking often.
Right.
If you're a real musician, that shit happens on the regular. Like, but you just keep going. Like, I tell people all the time, there have been bodies of work that no one will ever hear, and they're complete bodies of work, and they're shitty. They're fucking awful. They're horrible from the beginning to the end. They're bad, but they're excellent. They're great because it was a stepping stone to the next thing that I did that was really, really, that I really love, that I'm really, really proud of. And so how do I get over it? I just keep going. The other is that I'm a multidisciplinary artist. And so fortunately, if I'm frustrated as a musician, but I need to get an emotion out, I can turn to drawing, I can turn to painting, I can turn to writing. And the more years I've put on this life, the more that I know to not push with music. It's my first language, it's my first love. And so I want to treat her like my first love. I want to treat her sweet and be kind to her. And it's not that I'm not kind to my paintings or that I'm not kind with my other art, but there's a way that I feel like I can be a different kind of aggressive in those mediums. Whereas with music, I feel like the way that my spirit shows up in that space deserves a particular brand of reverence that I give to her.
Yeah. Awesome. And can you share a story about a song where you felt truly captured the emotion you wanted to convey?
I'd say anything that I've let humanity hear has captured the emotion that I meant to convey.
Fair.
You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a song that I have that I haven't released yet called Dreamers that I wrote as California and Oregon were on fire. We were in the middle of COVID, and I wanted to remind humanity, I wanted to remind myself that we create what we imagine. And much of what I create as a musician, as a writer, is really towards the end of reminding myself and humanity that we have agency, that we can create what we imagine. And so I'd say that Dreamers might be that, but then Ghetto International, anything I've let humanity hear captures my feelings.
There you go. Nice. I just want to take a quick break and tell you about my free snare guide. In it, I go over all my techniques, from drum choices, microphone placement, tuning, even mixing techniques. Check it out now at brendandecora.com/huge snare. And now, back to the show. How do you maintain your artistic vision while staying open to the guidance and expertise of producers and engineers?
As a woman producer in particular, I have learned that I have to create really strong boundaries, right? That I have to be like, hey, this is my vision. This is what I see, right? And in my younger creative spaces, I wouldn't say that I felt, looking back, and even in the time, that I was honored in my creative space as much, right? A lot of jacking of my vocals or jacking of my concepts or jacking of my production without my name on it, that type of thing, definitely happened early on in my career. And so I definitely have become more protective of my space. The blessing is that I became a badass producer though. Right? Like as a result of it, like I've learned how to do what I love to do for myself. And when I'm on stage and live forever, like I was saying before, music was a contact sport. It was my after school sport. So like when I perform in an ensemble space, I wouldn't even call it gracious. I would just say that like I'm open and I anticipate and expect that everybody that I'm creating with is allowing the spirit to move through them the same way that I am. But in the studio, I'm definitely in the creative process. I'm a lot more protective. And so I like to invite people in whose vibration I like to work with. Right. And then we're completely open, but don't be rolling up in my session talking about, hey, you should, more cowbell. Like, get the fuck on.
Exactly. Nice. And speaking of that, can you tell us about a collaboration that has taught you something new or changed your approach to music?
Wow. I think since I've been creating in the Trap Hill studio, there's definitely been an evolution in that sense of safety, really, right? Like I was saying, it's not always been my perspective has not always been respected in my own sessions. And in this space, there's been a lot of just ease, and everybody that's around here comes with their own skill set. And so there's a way that like when I work with you, that there's like an openness, and you're also aware like, okay, she wants to go in this direction. I trust that process. Right. And I also know that you are not just proficient, but like they call you a wizard for a reason, right? So like if you're like, I think that you need to do another few stacks of these vocals, we're going to pan it like so. I'm not asking no extra questions, and so, I think that in general, I like to be collaborative. I love being collaborative. I've learned that sometimes when you're too collaborative, people take your sweetness for weakness.
Right. And I wanted to ask too, because you mentioned, you had a hard time in the studio with the mic, in headphones and singing. Has anyone ever, like, it's not common, but it's definitely a known technique where you literally just use a 58 and put on the speakers, and it's like you're in a live show in the control room, full blast, doing the vocal take. Have you done that?
Not frequently. No? So next time we work together, let's do it.
I mean, it's not ideal sonically, but you get such a great performance if that's what you're used to. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I think what has happened, and this from engineers, it's like, okay, but if we ever want to chop this, or we want to make remixes, or any of those things, there's limitations, right? And so the only time I've ever really done that for the purpose of a recorded record was the one time I worked with Michael Franti. Besides that, it's been, which is why I love doing live records. I just love live albums, and I love listening to live albums, and
playing with the band and all that. Exactly.
It's a vibe. I mean, I even like doing live recordings of electronic music.
Okay.
Like you live programming and live singing. Like I think that the live element, you practice so that you know when and where and how you can break your rules.
Right.
And then you leave room for God to show up.
Right. And speaking of that exact thing, what is life like on tour, and how does that compare to the more controlled environment of the studio?
I love touring. I mean, short of the part where like you might roll into a city and then you're there for like 10 minutes and people are like, oh my God, how was Rome? And you're like, I fucking don't know. Like,
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, no idea. But I love tour because I think that the audience is another member of the band.
Yes.
Right. And so when you perform for a different audience in different places, they come culturally with their own stuff. Right. So like I performed in Singapore, totally thought I was bombing, did my first song, completely thought I was bombing. Right. Like I was like, no one has said anything. There's been no hooping, no hollering, no none of it. I do the song ends and they're like, and then like all together like a choir they stop and I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Right, which is fundamentally different than how they moved in Malaysia, which is right next door, which is completely different than how the shows have been in Europe or in the United States. And so I love performing in different spaces because you get these other cultural experiences, and then after the show, you have a whole other kind of conversation. Like I had the most amazing experience. God bless and God rest Gift of Gab, my very first tour in Europe. We were in Zurich at this place called Fabrik. And the engineers there, they were, kind of like you. And like engineers, like, God bless you guys. You guys are magic special breeds. Like drummers and engineers, and you're both. So you little quirky. Right. But this cat was like, check this out. I know that you think that you want to be loud. You're not gonna. Because hip hop should be heard at this decibel. We've done a bunch of testing. This is what we know. And we know. And like when somebody shows up with that kind of authority, you just kind of have to trust them. Plus it was their venue, so we had to do what they said anyhow. And it turned out to be one of the best shows on the tour, and we played stadiums. Wow. But this show was really, really special. And then afterwards, I learned a lot about myself as a vocalist, about what I was overcompensating for, or based on the sounds that were happening. I could hear everybody better. And then afterwards, because I am of the culture of hip hop, this kid scaled the back gate. Like it was like a 12-foot gate. This kid climbs up and down a gate to get to us. And he spoke German and Italian and some more shit that we did not speak at all. One thing he did not speak was English. But he spoke hip hop.
Okay.
And so he started breakdancing. And you could, again, this is another one of those moments where I tell these stories and I'm like, don't cry. But like, you could feel the hum. There were 8 of us that were standing in front of our tour bus, and we just could feel him saying, thank you. You've taught me so much. Nice. Thank you for healing this place in my life that was hard for me. Thank you for, And like all we could do would be like word. And, and that was the whole conversation. And so, tour is amazing because you meet people and they're as much a part of your human journey, your life journey, I'm healing from this broken heart. I'm falling in love. I'm, becoming this thing as they are for you. You know what I mean? Like they're listening to your music and they're like singing your songs that got them through the death of so-and-so, right? Or the new job that they got. And like, this is the soundtrack to and from their work, and they tell you those stories. And so, and they become over time, they're not fans, which is short for fanatic. They become fuel. They become family. They become, a part of the journey and the tapestry of your life experience,
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And how do you continue to educate yourself musically, and who or what are your greatest teachers?
My greatest teachers are my friends, and they always have been. Always have been. Like, I've been blessed to be around really beautiful musicians. So like at this phase in my life, Marvelous She, which you're a part of, my girl Shani, Damon Turner is a huge influence on my musical experience at the moment. My niece and nephew, who have an incredible musical experience, like the people that are in my family and in my life, right? Like they introduce me to new sounds constantly. I listen to new music, but I'm often surrounded by such incredible, talented people that, you know, on a normal day-to-day basis, I probably hear more Damon Turner than I hear, you know, whoever's on the radio right now. Like, I'm hearing Damon over Beyonce. I'm hearing Shawnee over, you know, whomever else. Right now, in terms of like what's in my personal rotation, like I love Hiatus Coyote.
Okay.
They're probably one of my favorite bands. I love Chief Ajua Atunde, like formerly known as Christian Scott, incredible musician. I love Kamasi Washington, who happens to be my birthday twin. Okay. I tend to listen to a lot of music that is instrumentally based. Right. I love Afrobeat. I love Fela. And I love Fela for his vocalism, but I really love the music of it all. Yeah.
Cool. And what are some current or recent projects you've been working on?
I recently released a project called Godspeak, which is a bit of a departure for me musically. It is a mantra record. So I took the chakra mantras, the seven common chakra mantras, which are simple in their mantra. I am, I feel, I move, right? And I added God and love to each of them. And then I translated it into Swahili and produced, you engineered that project. You did. Good job. And so it's, each of them are about 7 minutes. And for me, it was something that I needed for me. And as I got into it, realized that other people need it. I created it because I feel like Black folks in the diaspora need the power of mantra. And we need the opportunity to do it in something other than an oppressive mother tongue.
Right.
And so that was that. I have a live album that I did in the Bay Area right out after quarantine ended, live at the New Parish. And I'm working on a new album right now called Love Speak.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome. I like to wrap up each podcast with the same set of questions, and we've inadvertently answered 2 of them already. So I'll just skip to the last one.
Okay.
And what would be one tidbit for an upcoming artist you have?
Do you. Yeah. Do you the way that you do you, and the likelihood that you being you is going to ruffle some feathers is high. Right? And if you're really talented, people will want to guide the talent as they would if it was their own talent, and don't let them. Right? Like, you have to do you the way that you know you. Only you can hear the way that God is speaking to you, the way that God is showing up inside of you, however you identify the divine. And that's the only thing that you ever have to answer to. Right. Ever. So do you, and do you in your time. Right? Like, music is not something that you should get into for the purpose of being famous. Yeah. You know, I've heard this said a bazillion times from people who have been in this industry for a long time. If you can find something that you love more for a career, do that.
Yes.
For sure do that, because the amount of spiritual energy that goes into being a creative is huge, big, vast, colorful, big peaks, really deep valleys.
Yes.
Huge valleys, you know, and so, just do you. With love, and but don't leave no songs unsung. Right. Like, leave nothing on the table, man. Like, when you leave this planet, make sure that you've sung every song, that you've made every beat, that you painted every painting that you were meant to paint. Don't allow any distraction to keep you from you. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Sweet.
Peace.
Thanks so much for checking out the show. Make sure to subscribe for all the updates, and I'll see you next week.